Earth's first contact with the arena. The ship materialized in low Earth orbit without warning. One moment the sky was clear, and the next, a vast structure stretched across the heavens like a lattice of shadow and light. It wasn't metallic, nor biological, but something else entirely, an angular web that refracted sunlight into fractal patterns. A global cascade of alarms followed, drowning the world in a cacophony of alerts. Satellites scrambled, telescopes swiveled, and governments mobilized. In the heart of the Pacific aboard the ISS Trident, Captain Sarah Kovacs stood at the bridge. Her crew watched as a live feed from the orbital observatory zoomed in on the intruder. The ship, or artifact, was immense, its spindly arms extending kilometers wide, constantly shifting as if alive. Sarah's fingers tightened on the console. "Status," she barked, her voice cutting through the tension. Lieutenant Kamara, her second in command, didn't look up from his screen. No energy signatures matching any known propulsion. It's stationary. No immediate signs of hostility. The words offered no comfort. Sarah stared at the alien construct. After 20 years in service, she'd seen her share of near-space anomalies. None had prepared her for this. "Broadcast a universal greeting," she ordered. "Include standard mathematical sequences. Let's see if it responds." Her comms officer nodded, transmitting the message. The silence that followed was suffocating. For long minutes, nothing changed until, without warning, a single beam of golden light lanced down from the structure. It struck the Earth's surface in the middle of the Sahara Desert. "What the hell?" Kamara muttered, eyes wide. "It's not an attack," Sarah said, though her certainty faltered. "Sensors? No heat, no radiation, no kinetic impact," Kamara replied. "It's just light." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's AI interrupted. Its calm, monotone voice was jarring against the rising panic. "Unknown signal detected." Decoding. A moment later, a voice filled the room. Not mechanical, but eerily organic. It spoke perfect English, yet carried an unplaceable accent. "People of Earth, you are summoned." The crew froze. Sarah stepped forward, her pulse hammering. "This is Captain Sarah Kovacs of the Earth Defense Fleet." "Summoned by whom? For what purpose?" The voice returned, calm yet commanding. "You are summoned to the arena. Your species has reached the threshold. Participation is mandatory." "Arena?" Sarah's mind raced. "Threshold? What are you talking about?" There was no response. The golden beam flickered, then coalesced into a massive portal, shimmering like liquid glass. It hovered a few meters above the desert floor, a yawning gateway to the unknown. Half a world away, in the bustling streets of Lagos, Dr. Malik Owusu shoved his way through a panicked crowd. The sudden appearance of the alien portal had thrown the city into chaos. Malik, a xenobiologist, was already halfway to the airport when his phone buzzed. "Dr. Owusu?" The voice on the other end was clipped professional. "This is General Lang from UN Command. We need you at the Cairo Assembly." "I'm on my way," Malik replied, though his mind churned with questions. Cairo was the new center for Earth's extraterrestrial response efforts, and if they were calling him now, it meant one thing: the aliens weren't leaving. The Cairo Assembly buzzed with activity. Representatives from every major nation argued over next steps, while scientists huddled in tight circles, exchanging theories. Malik stepped into the chamber, immediately greeted by a harried-looking aide. "They're waiting for you in briefing room 3, she said, leading him through the labyrinthine corridors. Inside, a handful of key figures awaited him, including General Lang, Captain Kovacs, and a man Malik didn't recognize, a tall figure with an intense, almost predatory air. "Dr. Owusu," Lang began without preamble. "You're here because we believe you might help us understand what we're dealing with. This arena, we've selected a team to investigate the portal. You're part of it." Malik raised an eyebrow. "You want me to step through an alien gateway with no idea what's on the other side?" Lang didn't flinch. "We don't have the luxury of hesitation. This is bigger than us. If we decline, it might be interpreted as defiance. The consequences could be catastrophic." Malik finished. He sighed. Fine, but I'm going to need a lot more information before I agree. The tall man stepped forward, his presence commanding the room. You'll get what you need. Name's Ethan Drake, Intelligence Liaison. I'll be leading the mission. Malik frowned. Military? Ex-military. Now I specialize in making first contact situations survivable. Drake's expression was unreadable. You're here because we need thinkers as well as fighters. Malik exchanged a glance with Sarah, who gave him a slight nod. Reluctantly, he agreed. The next morning, the team gathered near the portal under the unrelenting desert sun. A crowd had formed, held back by a perimeter of soldiers. Sarah, Malik, and Drake stood side by side, their gear minimal but functional. Drones had already probed the portal, only to disappear without a trace. Drake glanced at his watch. Time's up. Let's move. As they approached the shimmering gateway, Malik hesitated. If this is a trap. It's not a trap, Sarah interrupted. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be gone. Malik swallowed hard, then stepped forward with the others. Together, they entered the portal. The transition was instant, like stepping through a veil of water. They emerged into a vast chamber unlike anything they had ever seen. The air hummed with energy, and the walls, if they could be called walls, shifted like liquid metal. Dozens of other beings were already present, some humanoid, others utterly alien. Their forms ranged from towering giants to amorphous clouds of light. At the chamber center stood a monolithic structure, its surface engraved with intricate glyphs that seemed to glow as they approached. A voice echoed, resonant and alien. Welcome to the arena. Here, the fate of your world will be decided. Drake's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm, but Sarah stopped him with a sharp look. Not yet, she whispered. Malik stepped closer to the structure, his scientist's curiosity overcoming his fear. What is this place? The voice answered. The arena is where civilizations prove their worth. Through trials, you will demonstrate whether your species is fit to ascend or fall. Sarah stepped forward. And if we refuse? The chamber darkened, and the glyphs flared with a warning light. Refusal is not an option. Drake muttered a curse. Figures. The team exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah squared her shoulders, meeting the invisible gaze of their host. Then we accept your challenge. The voice paused, as if evaluating her. Then it spoke again, colder this time. So begins the first trial. Survive if you can. The floor beneath them shifted, and the chamber dissolved into the Galactic Arena. Trials of the Ninja. The vast expanse of the Galactic Arena shimmered under the light of 1,000 holographic stars. The crowd, a kaleidoscope of species and cultures, buzzed with anticipation, their voices merging into a tidal roar that shook the air. At the center of it all was the Nexus platform, a floating, circular battleground forged from obsidian and interwoven with luminescent veins of energy. Today, the trials of the ninja would decide the fate of empires. Among the contestants stood Kale Yuru, the last heir of the Crimson Moon clan. Clad in a sleek black combat suit with crimson accents, Kale adjusted his mask, its jagged edges framing piercing eyes that seemed to absorb the light around them. His presence was unervingly calm, a stark contrast to the turbulence in his mind. The clan's honor rested on his shoulders, as did the fate of the rebel colonies that had dared to resist the oppressive Zentari dominion. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena. Contestants, welcome to the trials of the ninja. Only one may emerge victorious and claim the Starblade, the relic that grants its wielder untold power and command over the Dominion's armies. Kale's gaze swept the other competitors. To his left was Ixal, a hulking Grovan with arms like tree trunks and a reputation for pulverizing opponents. To his right, a masked figure radiating an eerie stillness, known only as Shade, stood motionless, their identity shrouded in mystery. Others filled the ranks, an Arcanian sorcerer, a cybernetically enhanced assassin, and a serpent-like alien with 6 limbs, each ending in a wicked blade. Begin! The signal was a deafening chime, and the Nexus platform sprang to life. Sections shifted and spun, creating a disorienting maze of floating platforms, energy walls, and shifting gravity fields. The combatants scattered, each seeking advantage. Kale moved with practiced precision, his form a blur as he leapt between platforms. His first target was Ixal, whose brute strength posed an immediate threat. Kale landed silently behind the Grovan, twin daggers drawn. He struck, his blades finding the chinks in Ixal's armor. But the Grovan roared and swung a massive fist. Kale narrowly evaded, his agility saving him from a crushing blow. "You're fast," Ixal growled, blood dripping from his wounds. "But speed won't save you forever." Kale said nothing, his focus unbroken. He darted forward, feinting left before driving a blade into Ixal's side. The Grovan stumbled, and with a final calculated strike, Kale sent him toppling off the platform into the void below. The crowd erupted, but Kale had no time to revel in the victory. A flash of light signaled an incoming attack. Shade, the enigmatic combatant, moved like a wraith, their blades slicing through the air. Kale parried, the clash of steel ringing out as they exchanged blows in a deadly dance. "You fight for honor," Shade whispered, their voice distorted. "But honor is a fragile thing, and yet it binds us," Kale replied, driving Shade back with a flurry of strikes. Their duel was interrupted by a sudden quake. The platform beneath them began to disintegrate, forcing both to retreat. Kale somersaulted onto a higher ledge, scanning the battlefield. The serpent-like alien had unleashed a wave of energy, destabilizing the Nexus. Kale clenched his fists. He couldn't allow the chaos to compromise his mission. He activated his suit's cloaking mechanism, disappearing into the shifting maze. Moments later, he found himself in a darkened alcove, his breath steady despite the mounting tension. A faint hum caught his attention, and he turned to see the Starblade. It hovered within an energy field at the center of the arena, a weapon of unparalleled beauty and power. Its hilt gleamed with ancient runes, and its blade pulsed like a living star. Reaching it would require outmaneuvering the remaining combatants, each of whom had converged on the relic. Kale weighed his options. Charging in would be suicide. He needed a strategy. Then he saw her, an unexpected figure amid the chaos. Erin Voss, a rogue operative Kale had encountered years ago. She had no allegiance, no loyalty, yet her presence here was no coincidence. She moved with surgical precision, eliminating the Arcanian sorcerer with a single, devastating strike. Kale emerged from the shadows, stepping into her path. "Voss," he said, his voice calm but firm. Her eyes narrowed. "Yuru," still playing the noble hero. "This isn't your fight," he replied. "Walk away." She smirked, twirling her weapon, a collapsible glaive. "And let you claim the Starblade? Not a chance." The tension was palpable as they circled each other. Kale knew her skills rivaled his own, and any misstep could be fatal. Their clash was swift and brutal. Kale deflected her initial strikes, countering with precise thrusts. Voss countered with a spinning attack, forcing him to retreat. They were equals in skill, their movements a blur of calculated aggression. "I don't want to kill you," Kale said between strikes. "Funny," Voss replied. "I was thinking the same." A sudden explosion rocked the arena, sending them both sprawling. The serpent-like alien had reached the Starblade, its 6 limbs forming a protective barrier as it tore through the energy field. Kale and Voss exchanged a glance. "Truce?" he asked. "Temporary," she replied, already sprinting toward the alien. Together, they launched a coordinated assault. Voss attacked from the front, her glaive slicing through the alien's defenses, while Kale struck from above, driving his daggers into its vulnerable back. The alien screeched, its form collapsing as the Starblade fell from its grasp. Kale reached for the relic, but a shadow loomed over him. Shade had returned, their blade poised to strike. The crowd held its breath as Kale raised his daggers, ready for the final confrontation. The final duel in galactic respect. The galaxy teetered on the edge of chaos, the fragile alliances between its countless star systems held together by little more than wary truces. In the heart of this tension stood 2 figures, their fates intertwined by war, honor, in an unspoken bond. Commander Alara Ventra tightened her grip on the plasma-forged hilt of her blade. The blue energy hummed with latent power, casting stark shadows across the derelict station's rusted walls. Opposite her, General Kedron Nile leaned into a defensive stance, his crimson weapon steady in his grasp. They were remnants of opposing ideals. Ilara, a vanguard of the Galactic Concord. Kedron, the face of the Obsidian Rebellion. Around them, the air crackled with the aftermath of their army's retreat. This was no longer a battle of factions. It was personal. "I gave you every chance to stand with us," Kedron said, his voice gravelly but calm. He circled her, eyes burning with conviction. "You know the Concord is corrupt to its core. Why fight for a system that enslaves its own people under the guise of order?" Ilara didn't flinch. "And your rebellion's chaos is the answer? Destroying entire colonies to make a statement? I've seen what your freedom brings, Kedron. It's blood without purpose." The silence between them was heavier than any blow. Both warriors knew this duel would shape more than their futures. It could decide the galaxy's fate. Kedron lunged, his blade a crimson streak cutting through the stale air. Ilara parried with precision, their weapons clashing in a burst of light and sound. Sparks rained down, illuminating the layers of fatigue and determination etched into their faces. "I wasn't always this," Kedron said, breaking the rhythm with a feint. "You know that?" Ilara dodged, sidestepping his attack and countering with a swift strike. "I know you were better than this. I know you believed in unity once." Kedron hesitated, just for a moment, and Ilara pressed the advantage. She forced him back, step by grueling step, until they were near the station's shattered observation deck. Beyond the broken glass, the vastness of space stretched out, stars flickering like distant memories. "You still believe in unity?" Kedron asked, his tone both incredulous and bitter. "Even when the Concord destroyed your home, took your family? How can you fight for them?" Ilara's resolve wavered, the question striking deeper than his blade ever could. She faltered but quickly steadied herself. "I fight because someone has to rebuild what was lost. I won't let hatred guide me." Kedron's eyes narrowed. "Hatred? You think I'm driven by hatred?" He disengaged, lowering his weapon slightly. "No, Ilara. I fight for those who can't. For the ones the Concord left behind in its pursuit of perfection." The words hung between them, raw and unfiltered. For the first time, Ilara saw the cracks in Kedron's unyielding demeanor. His rebellion wasn't born of greed or power. It was pain, twisted into purpose. But her blade didn't waver. "And what happens if you win?" she demanded. "Another broken system? Another war? We're locked in a cycle, Kedron. If you truly cared about the people, you'd stop this madness." Kedron's jaw tightened. "If I stop, they suffer. If I stop, no one listens." He raised his weapon again. "But if defeating you can force the Concord to change, then I'll bear that weight." The duel resumed with renewed intensity, their strikes fueled by conflicting visions for the galaxy. Every swing, every dodge, was a conversation, a clash of ideologies as much as skill. They were two sides of the same coin, bound by shared losses, yet divided by their responses to them. In a final, desperate exchange, Ilara disarmed Kedron with a deft maneuver. His blade clattered to the floor, the red energy flickering out. She stood over him, her weapon poised for the killing blow. "Do it," Kedron said, his voice steady despite the defeat. "Prove that your Concord's justice is nothing but vengeance in disguise." Ilara hesitated. She looked into his eyes and saw not a monster, but a man burdened by the weight of impossible choices. Slowly, she deactivated her blade and stepped back. "No," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "Killing you won't change anything. But maybe we can." Kedron's expression shifted, surprise flickering across his face before it hardened again. "You think the Concord will listen to me? To us?" "They'll have to," Ilara replied. "Or this galaxy will tear itself apart." For a long moment, neither moved. Then Kedron stood, his stance wary but not hostile. "If you're wrong, if they don't listen, there won't be a second chance." "I know," Ilara said, but it's a chance we have to take. Outside the shattered observation deck, the stars continued their silent vigil. Two enemies turned reluctant allies stood at the precipice of a new era, their choices echoing across the vast expanse of space. And in that fragile moment, the galaxy held its breath.